What if I told you a US warship was deliberately boxed in by multiple Chinese destroyers and militia vessels? Coming so close, their wakes rolled against the Higgins hull, yet there was no firefight. How does a ship armed with dozens of missiles, enough to flatten the opposition in minutes, merely hold its course and stand silent in the face of taunts? Today, we're breaking down one of the most extraordinary tests of modern naval power, and why the ending wasn't what anyone predicted. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Why did a routine mission become a crucible of international law and power struggle? To understand, you have to picture the USS Higgins on a calm patrol in contested waters near Scarborough Shoal. For the crew, this was part of a scheduled freedom of navigation operation, showing the flag in international seas and reminding everyone that open lanes of commerce are not the property of a single power. On the surface, it looked ordinary. Watch sections rotated, radar screens tracked civilian traffic and weather cells, and sailors stood their posts in practiced rhythm. The Higgins steamed at steady speed, holding the same trim course it had plotted hours earlier. Nothing about the day suggested it would enter the gaze of the world. That sense of routine ended in an instant. Lookouts suddenly called out warships closing fast on the horizon, Chinese destroyers and frigates bearing down like hounds on a scent. They didn't linger at a safe offset. In minutes, they pressed inside half a kilometer, zigzagging across Higgins' bow at razor-close angles. Waves from their sharp turns broke high against the side of the American ship, slamming in sync with each pass. Voices crackled over the radio, the message sharp and aggressive. U.S. warship, you are in Chinese waters. Leave immediately or face consequences. A patrol that began as an assertion of maritime law had shifted into a dangerous standoff. The difference in tone between ships told the larger story. Higgins' bridge responded with cool, technical phrases, polite acknowledgments, call signs repeated, intentions logged. No raised voices carried across the airwaves, only steady direction. From the Chinese ships, the atmosphere was very different. Loudspeakers blasted at full volume, drowning the sea air with warnings and threats designed to rattle nerves. The contrast was striking. One side leaning on intimidation, the other on discipline, carved from training. Above decks, the physical tension pressed in even harder. Sailors leaned over to watch in disbelief as swells created by parallel hulls slapped against Higgins' beam with a cracking rush of water. Every second carried the risk of bumping steel to steel, and here, that could mean a collision between nuclear-armed navies. Militia vessels darted through gaps like hyenas crowding a stag. Their hulls were smaller, but their erratic angles forced constant watch. Off the Higgins' bow, a scatter of Filipino fishing boats broke formation as water cannons tore across their decks, driving them away from the shoal where families had worked for generations. It would have been easy to reach for triggers, easy to elevate a deck gun or rotate a launcher in warning. But inside the Combat Information Center, where consoles glowed with radar returns, the order never came. No weapons armed, no pointers extended from turrets. Not even the smallest sign of aggression showed from the American ship. This was discipline at its most restrained. Every watchstander trained to understand that the smallest flash of violence could redraw the map of Asia. These weren't just close maneuvers. They were provocations designed to create a spark. And just one spark was all it would take. The risks multiplied with every passing second. A misunderstood light signal, a slip of the helm, or a faulty radio transmission could spiral into theater-wide conflict. Yet, for the sailors of the Higgins, the decision was already made. No provocation, no emotional trigger. The destroyer did not flinch. It held its course and speed exactly as plotted hours before. The very picture of controlled defiance. That composure was not just an operational stance, it was the tactic. The Higgins denied escalation by demonstrating absolute restraint under pressure. Yet this narrow trial was only the beginning. If holding discipline for a few minutes tested nerves, surviving hours of relentless provocation without firing a single shot would be the true ordeal. How does overwhelming firepower transform into a tool of silence instead of destruction? On paper, the USS Higgins was a floating fortress. 96 vertical launch cells slotted beneath deck could unleash a variety of missiles, long-range, precision-guided, or anti-air, depending on the loadout. Its Aegis suite locked onto targets hundreds of miles away, while operators could track more than 200 contacts simultaneously. Closer still, an automated phalanx gun perched near the stern could spin up 30mm rounds at nearly 45,500 per minute, enough to shred incoming aircraft or missiles into confetti. Everything about the destroyer's silhouette spoke to brute power, ready at a moment's notice. Yet on that tense day, this arsenal became something else entirely. Instead of preparing for offensive strikes or defensive barrages, it stood as silent leverage, a constant presence that never fired. Contrast the hardware with the human voices that carried through the bridge. Sailors expected to hear instructions to ready weapons or alter course under pressure. Instead came the steady rhythm of quiet authority. Hold course, maintain speed. Nothing dramatic, no high-volume commands, no sudden maneuvers, just repetition of the same order every few minutes. A reminder to every man on watch that self-control was the mission. When the storm outside accelerated, the atmosphere inside Higgins slowed to precise calculations and calm words. For China's commanders, the game was psychological. Their ships cut across Higgins' path at provocative speeds, while cameras captured every moment for later broadcast. They wanted proof of U.S. aggression, a clip showing a gun elevated, a missile hatch opened, or just the crackle of an angry voice over the radio. That material would fuel Beijing's narrative that America was the offender, not the defender of international routes. Higgins gave them nothing. The cameras filmed silence, discipline, and a ship that refused to step outside lawful conduct. Every attempt to rattle was met with non-response that proved more commanding than any weapon fired. The paradox was unnerving. Higgins held the capacity to erase every threat surrounding it in minutes, but its survival hinged on not touching the trigger. One Tomahawk salvo could gut a shadowing frigate. A Standard missile could erase enemy aircraft beyond the horizon. Yet those options lived only on console screens and training manuals. In the water around Scarborough Shoal, firing meant war. That knowledge weighed heavier than the missiles themselves. True strength was not in using firepower, but in wielding the restraint to keep it dormant. Across the waves, Chinese Type 052D destroyers mirrored Higgins. Each carried its own bank of vertical launchers, including the feared YJ-18 anti-ship missile, capable of sprinting at blistering speed in its terminal phase. A single launch would push the American crew to defend with everything at hand, turning the standoff into chaos. Their presence was a deliberate reminder that China, too, could raise the stakes instantly. That domination was contested. Higgins traversed the gauntlet, aware that one mistaken maneuver would awaken a missile duel capable of rewriting balance in the Pacific. From deck level, the scene grew surreal. These hostile silhouettes didn't keep distance. They stalked beside Higgins like predators circling prey. Each wake foamed under their propellers, overlapping in rolling patterns that smacked violently against steel. Beyond them, civilian boats broke away in disarray. What once looked like everyday fishing vessels now scattered like debris caught between opposing giants. The standoff was choking not only the naval players, but also regional life that relied on the same waters. The confrontation at Scarborough Shoal was not measured in missiles fired or ships sunk. Its outcome was defined by the Higgins refusing to flinch when provoked within striking distance. That restraint turned the moment into a victory of discipline over escalation. Showing control holds more weight than noise. Peace isn't upheld by overwhelming destruction, but by the decision to remain steady when another side demands conflict. Tension lingered on those waters, yet conflict never erupted. If you want more direct analysis of maritime power and the law that shapes it, subscribe and follow for upcoming reports on the world's oceans.